The quiet mornings in the suburbs of Dearborn are always serene. Sunlight falls gently on the neatly arranged brick houses, adorned with well-manicured lawns. At the heart of this peaceful neighborhood lived the Hassan family, a couple highly respected by the community. Tariq Hassan was an engineer, a cornerstone of his company, by the age of 35. Intelligent and diligent, he was often seen in his crisply pressed suits, driving off to work in the morning light. His wife, Samira, was a full-time homemaker, juggling the roles of a mother and a devoted wife. Every morning she prepared breakfast for Tariq, took their 7-year-old son Amir to school, and then immersed herself in endless household tasks. Neighbors often remarked that the Hassan couple embodied traditional values: a successful husband and a caring wife, building what seemed to be the perfect family together. But the calm was shattered by an unthinkable tragedy. On a bright, sunny morning, the wailing of police and ambulance sirens tore through the neighborhood. News spread quickly. Tariq had been found dead in the study of his home. His body lay slumped near the desk, riddled with stab wounds. The scene was a chaotic mess, with blood spattered across the walls. Such a gruesome crime was unprecedented in this peaceful community, leaving everyone in utter shock. Why did this happen? Neighbors whispered among themselves, struggling to reconcile the violent murder with the image of the ideal couple. The tranquility of the community was replaced by an unsettling tension, as everyone sought to understand what had turned this seemingly perfect family into the stage for such a tragedy. Want to know more details? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. From the outside, Tariq and Samira's marriage appeared flawless, but emotional cracks between them had been quietly growing over time. Tariq, a meticulous engineer, devoted most of his energy to work. Even at home, he often focused on reports and projects rather than his family. His silence and fatigue gradually left Samira feeling neglected. Samira's days were filled with endless chores. From morning until night, she barely had a moment to herself. She diligently cared for their children, managed the household, and tried to show concern for her husband. Yet her efforts were often met with Tariq's indifferent responses. Their conversations dwindled from deep, late-night talks to simple "good morning" and "good night." Whenever Samira tried to express her feelings, Tariq would brush her off, citing exhaustion from work. Over time, her sense of loneliness swelled like an unrelenting tide, with no one to confide in. In the midst of this loneliness, Zaid's arrival brought a new dynamic to Samira's life. Zaid, Tariq's younger brother, was the complete opposite of his reserved sibling. He was free-spirited, energetic, and always knew how to lighten the mood. After a family gathering, Zaid began visiting the Hassan household frequently, sometimes to play with the kids, other times to help Samira fix small issues around the house. His humor and attentiveness pierced through the shadows of Samira's solitude. Their bond deepened over time. One quiet afternoon, Samira and Zaid sat on the backyard bench, chatting. Zaid shared stories of his travels, and for the first time in a long while, Samira felt truly heard. Her laughter became more frequent, and this newfound ease added complexity to her emotions. The cracks in the marriage were already there, but Zaid's presence undoubtedly accelerated an inevitable shift. The night enveloped the Dearborn suburb, and the streets were quiet, save for the occasional sound of the wind. Beneath this peaceful facade, Samira's heart was ablaze. Her relationship with Zaid had quietly crossed an irreversible boundary, evolving from mere emotional support into something far more dangerous. It all began with an unexpected embrace. One rainy afternoon, Samira was at her lowest point. She complained about the children's mischief, Tariq's indifference, and the stifling monotony of life. Zaid listened quietly and then gently pulled her into a hug. That warm gesture unleashed a torrent of tears, marking the start of their moral transgression. Their secret meetings, initially limited to weekly afternoon teas, soon turned into clandestine late-night rendezvous. Zaid would drive through several streets under the cover of darkness, parking 2 blocks away from the Hassan home. Samira, on the pretense of running errands or walking the dog, would slip out to meet him. They often spent an hour or two in an unassuming cafe, sharing thoughts they dared not reveal to anyone else. Sometimes they drove to a distant lakeside, sitting silently in the car while gazing at the calm water, their hands tightly clasped. These fleeting moments became Samira's only solace. She began paying more attention to her appearance, even trying to hide the excitement that would unconsciously surface. Yet her efforts did not escape Tariq's notice. At first, Tariq merely thought his wife's behavior was slightly off. She seemed distracted during dinner conversations and would take unusually long on errands. One day, he caught a glimpse of a text on Samira's phone from Zaid. Did the meeting go well? Though Samira quickly locked her screen, Tariq felt a chill of unease. Tensions between the couple grew noticeably during this period. Tariq became more suspicious, questioning even the smallest details of Samira's explanations. Samira, feeling cornered, responded with guarded defensiveness and frustration. She knew Tariq's suspicions were deepening, and her secret with Zaid was becoming harder to conceal. During one argument, Tariq couldn't hold back and asked, "What have you been so busy with lately?" Samira hesitated, struggling to mask her panic, but her unease reflected clearly on her face like a mirror. At that moment, both realized that a crisis was looming, even though neither dared to speak the truth. This forbidden love was like a fine crack, spreading silently across the seemingly solid foundation of the Hassan family. One quiet weekend morning, Tariq accidentally found Samira's phone left on the kitchen table. The screen lit up with a new message from Zaid. "Last night's kiss kept me awake all night." A single sentence struck Tariq like a bolt of lightning. Trembling, he opened the chat history, where a stream of romantic messages, plans, and memories revealed an unbearable truth. Tariq clenched his fists tightly, anger and humiliation filling his chest. He threw the phone onto the table and paced the living room, forcing himself to calm down. But his mind kept replaying those disgusting words. Unable to suppress his rage any longer, he stormed into the bedroom. "What the hell are you doing, Samira?" His voice was low but seething with restrained fury. Samira looked up from the vanity table, clearly startled by the sudden confrontation. "What are you talking about?" She tried to maintain her composure. Tariq threw the phone onto the bed, shouting, "Don't play dumb! What is this? You and Zaid, you betrayed me, betrayed our family." His voice grew louder, his emotions spiraling out of control. Samira's eyes widened and her face turned pale. Her lips quivered as she struggled to find the right words to explain the situation. After a moment of silence, she said softly, I'm sorry, Tariq. I didn't mean for this to happen." "Didn't mean for it to happen?" Tariq's laugh was bitter and mocking. "You sneak around with my brother, and you dare say it wasn't intentional?" Samira tried to approach him, but Tariq coldly stepped back. "Listen to me," her voice carried a hint of pleading. "I felt lonely, neglected. You were always busy with work and never cared about how I felt. Zaid he made me feel alive." "So your solution was to sleep with my brother?" Tariq was furious. "Do you realize you've destroyed everything, our family, our life?" Tears welled up in Samira's eyes. She tried to explain, but Tariq's anger left no room for a rational conversation. Pointing at her, his voice filled with menace, he said, "I'll make sure everyone knows what you've done. If you think I'll tolerate this, you're delusional." Samira tried to stop him, but Tariq slammed the door and left, leaving her slumped on the edge of the bed. Tears streamed down her face like a broken dam. In the bedroom, only her soft sobs remained, echoing alongside the ticking of the clock on the wall. It was an unusually quiet night, with the cold winter wind of Dearborn suburb carrying a biting chill. Inside the Hassan family home, the lights were dim. Tariq sat in his study, piles of scattered documents on his desk, as if trying to calm his inner anger with work. His phone screen continued to flash with missed calls and unread messages, mostly from Samira, who had been trying to reach him since their argument earlier in the day, but he ignored all of them. At midnight, the light in the study suddenly went out, plunging the room into darkness. Tariq stood up, groping his way toward the fuse box. Just as he turned, a shadowy figure flashed past the door, and a cold iron tool was slammed into the back of his head. Tariq staggered and fell to the floor, barely able to scream before the second blow came, swift and fatal. By morning, Samira, restless from a sleepless night of anxiety, stepped out of the bedroom. She pushed open the study door, only to be met with the horrifying sight. Tariq lay in a pool of blood, his face pale, his eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. On the floor beside him lay a bloodied tool lying still. "Oh my God, Tariq," she screamed, nearly collapsing as she shakily dialed 911. Her voice broke as she described the scene to the operator. Minutes later, police cars arrived with sirens blaring, their red and blue lights illuminating the entire block. Officers quickly sealed off the scene and began investigating the evidence. Detectives carefully examined every corner of the room, documenting scattered papers, Tariq's phone, and the bloody weapon. "We initially suspect this is a crime of passion," a police officer said, as he questioned Samira. The murderer clearly had strong personal resentment toward the victim. Samira pressed her hands over her mouth, shaking her head, her eyes vacant as she responded incoherently to the police. Her mind was filled with confusion and fear. Who could have done this? Why did it happen to their family? Her thoughts swirled, almost suffocating her. As the morning light spread across the land, Tariq's body was taken away, leaving behind an unsolved mystery and a suffocating silence. The day after Tariq's murder, the police officially began questioning Samira. The atmosphere in the interrogation room was tense and cold. Samira sat at the table, her face pale, her hands clasped together, fingers trembling. The detective slid a file in front of her. It was a set of chat records recovered from Tariq's phone, clearly showing private conversations between her and Zaid. "What is your relationship with Zaid?" the detective asked, his tone calm and direct. Samira swallowed hard, her voice barely audible. "He's my friend." "Just a friend?" The detective raised an eyebrow and continued, "These messages suggest your relationship is more than just friendship." He pointed to the last part of the conversation where Samira had texted Zaid, "It's over. He knows everything." Faced with the questioning, Samira's emotions suddenly collapsed. She covered her face, sobbing as she confessed to the affair with Zaid, but she insisted that she had no knowledge of Tariq's death. "How could I harm him?" she repeated. "He's the father of our children." However, there were inconsistencies in her statements. For instance, she initially claimed she had been with the children all evening, but the surveillance footage showed her leaving the house alone around midnight and walking to the backyard, where she stayed for about 10 minutes. At the same time, the police turned their focus to Zaid. His behavior after the incident was particularly suspicious. Several neighbors testified that he had briefly visited the area near the Hassan residence on the night of the murder, but he had not disclosed the reason for his visit to anyone. What was even more unsettling was that several hours after Tariq's body was found, Zaid mysteriously disappeared and his phone was switched off and could not be traced. "His disappearance makes him the primary suspect," the police announced in a press conference. "We are working hard to locate him." However, the case took a new turn. A witness provided an important clue. On the night of the murder, around 10 p.m., Zaid was seen leaving a gas station near the Hassan home. His vehicle was captured on surveillance, heading south, and this time did not match the time of Tariq's death, which occurred at least 2 hours later. This piece of information led the police to reconsider Zaid's direct involvement. "Does this mean he has an alibi?" the detective asked during an internal meeting. While the clue was puzzling, it didn't completely rule out Zaid's involvement. In fact, it only made the case more complicated. The death of Tariq seemed to conceal a deeper secret, and the relationship between Samira and Zaid remained at the heart of it all. As the case reached a standstill, a new clue provided by a neighbor caught the attention of the police. The neighbor claimed that on the night of the incident, she had seen Ibrahim, a single man who lived in the same community, near a park across the street, holding a large plastic bag and looking nervously around. At the same time, the surveillance footage retrieved by the police showed Ibrahim briefly entering the Hassan family's backyard at midnight before quickly leaving. His suspicious behavior made him a new subject of investigation. Ibrahim was an old neighbor of the Hassan family, always polite and friendly, and maintained a good relationship with Samira's family. However, after a deeper investigation, the police found that his relationship with Samira was not just casual. Ibrahim had often used the excuse of helping Samira with daily chores to get closer to her, and many of his words and actions had crossed boundaries, which Samira had either ignored or brushed off lightly. Through interviews with residents of the community, the police learned that Ibrahim's attention towards Samira had developed from admiration into an unhealthy obsession. Private chat records from the community's social media group revealed that Ibrahim had often mentioned Samira, hinting that he hoped one day to become her true partner. At one gathering, he even inadvertently revealed a chilling remark: "If there were no Tariq, things would be much simpler." This information raised the police's suspicions. During further questioning, Ibrahim initially remained calm, insisting that his relationship with Samira was merely a friendship and that he was just passing by the Hassan house on the night of the incident. However, when the police presented the surveillance footage and questioned his motives in detail, his responses became fragmented. Eventually, the police found more shocking evidence in Ibrahim's home. On an old computer, there were numerous photos and journal entries about Samira, one of which detailed his plans to remove the obstacle a few days before the incident. Additionally, a blunt instrument with traces of blood was found in the trunk of his car, which matched the shape of the wound on Tariq's head. The police speculated that Ibrahim's motive for murdering Tariq stemmed from long-standing jealousy and resentment. On the night of the incident, he had taken advantage of the tensions between Tariq and Samira and quietly entered the Hassan house. He waited in the backyard for the right moment, then attacked the unsuspecting Tariq when he left the living room. To cover up his crime, Ibrahim quickly cleaned up the scene and left, attempting to shift suspicion onto Zaid. As the evidence piled up, Ibrahim eventually confessed to the crime. In tears, he said, "I just wanted to make her happy, but he was always an obstacle." His confession brought the case to a close, and the revelation of the truth made the tragedy all the more poignant. Ibrahim finally confessed to all the crimes during his interrogation. He admitted that his long-standing admiration for Samira had gradually turned into an uncontrollable obsession. Upon learning of the cracks in her marriage, he mistakenly believed that removing Tariq, the obstacle, would win him Samira's heart. On the night of the murder, he sneaked into the Hassan household, attacked Tariq with a blunt instrument while he was alone in the yard, and then quickly fled. The revelation of this truth shocked the entire community. Neighbors found it hard to believe that this seemingly friendly neighbor had been hiding such extreme emotions and actions. People felt deep sympathy for the Hassan family, who not only lost the pillar of their home, but also became entangled in an irreparable tragedy. The complexity of the case left people pondering. The cracks in the marriage, the loss of control over emotions, and the hidden dangers lurking between neighbors each highlighted the contradictions and fragility of human nature. This tragedy was not only a warning from the law, but also a mirror reflecting the emotional world, one that lingered in people's minds long after.